Welcome to Real Therapy, the place where we talk about how movies make us feel. I'm your host, Donavon Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
And today we're joined by the one, the only, Dr. Bruce Hutchinson. This is Real Therapy, and you know what that means.
They're gonna talk about how it makes them feel. They're gonna watch all the movie reels, cause it's Dan and Don in Real Therapy. It's real.
Hey Bruce, you are correct. It is, it's been way too long. I think we did, was it The Usual Suspects last? Was that the last one we did?
That makes sense. Gosh, it's been so long I couldn't say for sure, but sounds about right.
Gosh dang, this has been a blur for me, yeah. I think it was Usual Suspects, and I think also because there's a little moment in this movie we're fixing to talk about in a second, and I was like, oh, are we like in this reveal crime thriller moment for a second? But for our listeners, we are talking about The Devil Wears Prada. The second one is out in theaters now, and so we chose to go a different route. I think this is the first time we've done, I'm fearful to say rom-com, but it's got a lot of kind of traditional elements and kind of structure that a rom-com has, but it is, I'm not sure it falls under that category. I don't know yet. I'll hear your guys' thoughts. So I do want to kind of real quick go around the table and get everyone's, it's been, I don't know when the first one came out. I need to check, but 2011. So that's really
25th anniversary when we were first looking.
Okay.
So
wow. Yeah. So
2011 would make sense.
Not 25. Sorry. That was a little bad there.
So it's been that long since I've seen the first time. I remember really liking it as a kid, and I think I saw it a couple times on TV, HBO, whatever. And I thought it was super entertaining now, and I'm excited to kind of break it down with you guys and see what your guys' thoughts are.
Yeah, Bruce, what did you think? Or where did you?
Yeah. So I've always loved Devil Wears Prada. I think it's a fantastic movie. I'm not like a super fashion expert, but I've had an interest in fashion in the past, so I already enjoyed that part of it. I really love the story. I do have one part of it that always bugged me a little bit that I'll save for our discussion, but I love the movie. I've watched it multiple times. I've already seen the sequel, so I'm excited to talk about it. And I agree, it's a different kind of movie than we normally do. We haven't had as many female protagonists given the type of movies we often choose, and we can debate whether it's a rom-com or some other kind of genre, but either way, regardless of how we slice it, I don't think we've done a movie kind of that fits this profile really before, so I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah, me too. Daniel?
Yeah, so I did check it. It came out in 2006, which 2006 was prime. Daniel, sorry, was there an audio issue?
Oh no, I just 20 years. So just doing
20 years
anniversary.
Yes,
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so that was definitely in prime. Daniel doesn't watch movies with chicks as the lead, probably era. You know what I'm saying? Like just that time. That's where I came from. So I mean, I would have always labeled this as a chick flick growing up, right? I mean, it's about fashion. It's about a girl getting makeovers and standing up for herself to toxic men and, all these kinds of things. And I don't know if I watched it until I started dating my wife. I don't think I did. And it was one of her favorite movies. And so, we watched it and I remember being like, wow, this is a great movie. You know what I mean? Like it's well acted. There's so many iconic one-liners. There's really interesting commentary on fashion, on skinniness and attractiveness and all these kinds of things. And I think it's got an interesting ending. It doesn't have this perfect bow wrapped on top ending, and it kind of leaves you with some things to think about or to consider. I did see this. I saw a comparison of this movie to another one I know that we all like that I had not thought about, and now I can't stop thinking about it. But I saw someone mention that this and Whiplash are basically the same movie or the same journey.
I was thinking about it.
The same type of exploring what it takes to be elite, to be the best, or what it costs to become that kind of person, or are you willing to do it or not, or what's the cost for you, all those kinds of things. And I think, it's interesting because I feel like this Whiplash ends at like 30 minutes earlier in the plot of this movie, in terms of like, we're just going to end before the character has had time to realize they're wrong and make any changes, kind of thing. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things there. I will say the only thing that just, it feels a little dated to me is the soundtrack. I know it's so of the time and stuff, but that's the only part where I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, I really can tell this is a 2000s movie. You know what I mean? And that's slightly there. Now, it's just the first time I've noticed that feeling old in 2006, being like, oh, this feels not modern.
Before we dive into it, I do want to say I forgot and I was reminded, this was the start of my love affair with Stanley Tucci. Was this movie. Yeah. And I don't think there's a single movie he's been in where I'm like, he was bad or he wasn't entertaining. And I just love watching that man work. He's just so endearing and he's just spot on. And of course he's perfect for this role. And
he's
so
one of the highlights. He's like a minor character, but stands out so much.
And this is probably also my introduction to Emily Blunt, and I love her obviously in tons of movies. We've got to do Edge of Tomorrow at some point, just because I love that movie. Did you really? Oh, I love that movie.
I haven't seen it in probably 8 years.
God, I love it so much. And so, I love her. I just like, it's a stellar cast. It's great. And of course, I don't know why I had this thing where I didn't love Meryl Streep when I was younger. But as I've gotten older and wiser and more seasoned, I've come to appreciate how great of an actress she is. And obviously watching her in this role, she's so fun to watch, just like everybody else. And
it's hard to imagine anyone else doing it this
of
well.
Course, yeah.
It's kind of one of the roles I think of when I think of Meryl Streep, and like just her iconic roles. This is high up there. It's just like,
yeah.
I did want to jump
ahead.
in. Is Daniel, I hadn't thought about that comparison to Whiplash, but it does ring true, and it actually fits right into the sort of the one little problem that I've always had with the movie. So that's going to be a nice kind of connection there. And people may disagree with me on this, which is totally fine. But yeah, that comparison to Whiplash is part of where I'm going to want to go with my thoughts about kind of the end of the movie.
Yeah, let's kind of dive into it. So, one thing I can't quite recall if this is a staple of the chick flick or rom-com kind of thing, is there's a lot of montages in this movie. A lot of music beats and we're getting, obviously super quick cuts and a lot of information kind of thrown at us. And the movie kind of starts that way, right? We're kind of getting the getting ready montage, the classic, girl starting a new job. And we're going to kind of see what her typical normal life is right now and how she functions, how she lives, and she's fixing to become part of this different world. And so to me, the first 4 to 8 minutes there is kind of getting, how she is now, and then how what she's going to fixing to butt up against in terms of this new lifestyle and the challenges. And obviously she hasn't got the job yet, but this is where she really gets that fashion world for the first time, and she's immediately judged multiple times as she's getting to that first meeting with Miranda.
Well, and that montage is really clever right from the start, because it's not just a typical getting ready for your interview, first day of work kind of thing. It actually compares and contrasts what she's wearing and how she gets ready with all of the model type women who work at Runway, and so we see what they do to get ready and the clothes they're wearing versus what Andy's wearing. So it's already setting us up for, the collision that is about to happen. And so we're getting some nice thematic exposition, as well as just sort of straight up exposition that, she's talking to Nate, she's going in for the interview, it's sort of an internship, it's surprising, she's a journalist, but she's going to Runway. So we're getting plenty of exposition, but we're also getting some deeper thematic stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
It is very, and this maybe is the main part of the movie. And maybe it makes sense just because, you know, movies are always trying to shoot for the widest audience as possible. But that first few minutes is very male gazy compared to the rest of the film.
I thought so too.
I remember I was just like,
because I was like, oh,
first shot is just boobs or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, well, I don't remember this being in the movie, like, kind of thing. And maybe it is just that kind of like, okay, first 4 minutes we're trying to hook as many people as possible. Yes, this movie's mainly for women, but if we show panties and boobs, men might keep watching. You know,
I did perk up a little when the movie started.
Yeah,
I did.
But it's funny because I don't feel like the rest of the movie feels that way at all.
No,
and it could have,
not really. Yeah.
But it never really does that later. But you're right, Bruce. I think it is really clever that it's kind of sneaky because at first you're thinking, oh, this is all, you know, Andy getting ready at first. They don't really show faces at first, and then you realize, oh no, these are different women. Oh, okay, now we're seeing the contrast. So I agree, it's a very clever because it feels like a little cliche. You start with a montage of a character getting ready for work, right? A lot of times we've outlawed that in film school. None of your movies can start with someone getting ready for work or waking up to an alarm clock, right? Like, you know, that's outlawed. But yeah, it's really clever in that it's telling you something, even if you don't completely pick up on it, you're probably picking up on it later.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think the first real, obviously we meet, Emily, it's Emily, correct? Is it Emily and Emily Blunt? Okay. So yeah, we meet Emily for the first time.
What's not helpful that Miranda calls characters the wrong name all the time.
Yeah.
On purpose. She's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And so we get that first meeting between Emily and Andy, and obviously this is Emily's life. This is what she wants to do. Her, you know, this is everything to her, right? And you're getting that sense too because she's just, you know, she's already indoctrinated to a degree in terms of how she tailors to Miranda and her expectations and all these kind of things. So you're getting automatically that sense of that world, and then obviously Miranda shows up, and we get that first bit of conflict, and then you know, even from Miranda, you're getting the sense of the dynamic between. I'm assuming, I can't remember how long they said Emily's been working for her, but even the first thing out of Miranda's mouth to Emily is, I have to do the interview myself because clearly you're not capable of doing this.
Right.
So she's already, you know, putting people down, and or we're seeing that, you know, from Miranda. And so we're getting that dynamic, and you would think typically someone who's been working for a while, and Emily probably is pretty good at her job, all things considered, that they wouldn't talk that way, but not in this world, right? This is every day, every second part of the course. And then the first real conflict we get, I think, other than just everyone commenting on Andy's appearance and all these things, is the Miranda-Andy moment. And I think Miranda sees that she sticks up for herself a little bit. You know, she's like, hey, I'm smart. I'm good at what I do. And she sees that little fire in her, and it causes her to hire her back.
Yeah.
Or not hire her back, but hire her. Yeah.
Yeah. I will point out, and it is kind of interesting with what you mentioned about the beginning, and we're looking at a movie that's 20 years old, is how exactly to take sort of the comments on Andy's appearance, and her size, you know.
4 is the new 0, or that feels especially like,
and 6 is the new 14.
Oof. Right.
I love that.
That feels dated.
But
dated.
yeah, you know, it rides a fine line between like, this is just normalized and this is part of the industry, but also, I don't know if it's our hindsight or whatever, or whether it's still baked into the movie just a little bit that this is problematic. But you know, and you know, are we supposed to? And I saw it when it came out, but I can't quite remember, you know, when those lines came out. Were we just like, oh yeah, everyone should be skinny, or oh, I can't believe they're saying that to her. You know what I mean? Obviously now we would be like, I can't believe that they're saying that to her, and we understand that's part of the industry at that time.
I think there's at least some of that, because I mean, the way even he calls her 6 as a nickname, I mean, that's very pointedly. Like, who would want to be called their waist size, even in the 2000s, even if it was a good one? You know?
6 is not in any
tiny.
way or form fat. Exactly.
No. Well, I mean, if you notice the other people, like the last person who ends up becoming the new quote unquote Andy, And then those are actual models, like famous models,
yeah.
right? And so I think if I remember correctly, I remember that being par for the norm. Like it was, you're still thin
It's
as
par
thin.
for the norm, but it can also be like toxic and not good for society.
I didn't say it wasn't. I'm saying that was the culture. I felt like, if I remember correctly, we didn't really get into the, body positivity kind of movement until probably after 2010, 2012 area. I felt like, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, probably 10 years.
This is that for sure.
I think it's realistic. Let's put it that way. It's realistic for that setting and that time period, for sure.
Yeah, it's also just an interesting start for a protagonist. And especially if we're looking at something like Whiplash, like in Whiplash, Emily's the protagonist, the one that wants this so bad and has been dreaming about it forever. And our protagonist is just kind of like, okay, whatever. I mean, I can do it. I don't have another job. Whatever. It's like, it is an interesting journey, her transition to eagerness in this film, of actually like chasing the plot, being active, not just kind of being passive. And I know we basically have a montage that is that change, like the makeover montage. It is just an interesting, like it works. There's nothing about it that's being like, and I think probably part of the reason it works is because Miranda is such a magnet on the screen and such an interesting character. I mean, you're watching everything she does, every eye movement, every head turn is so filled with information that it's almost like this passive protagonist doesn't bother me, because there's such a active, I don't even know if you call it an antagonist, but plot driver. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's an interesting thing where if Miranda wasn't so Miranda, this might feel a little more empty, or a little more like, okay, what's going on here? Why aren't we, why isn't this character...
It would be a struggle at the beginning, and that comparison to Whiplash is interesting because from the beginning of Whiplash, Andrew Neiman is very motivated to excel.
He's Emily. He's Emily.
Yeah, he's more Emily, and whereas Andy, just doesn't really appreciate the situation, doesn't really understand it, wants a summer internship, kind of has an understanding, if I can survive here long enough, I'll have a good reference to work other places. But you're right. She, and I think this is not, I think it's somewhat standard for first acts, where a character is somewhat passive and doesn't understand the situation fully. And then the movie becomes about them trying to step up and fulfill their potential in that, for good or for bad, which we'll discuss. But
it's very coming of age, like in some ways. And in some ways, this is about her wising up to the rules of life, right? Like, that's kind of the lessons she learns in the end.
But I will say, the first, after we get, presumably the inciting incident is Emily comes down and basically says, you're hired, right? So now she's got to sort of try to figure out, the rules of everything. I think there's just a really good setup with who the characters are and what they're doing. That is, there could have just been one assistant, but there's two, so we can contrast Emily and her goals as Miranda's assistant with Andy and see sort of the difference there. We, of course, have Miranda, who's this, incredibly demanding, borderline, evil boss. But then she's balanced out by Nigel, who, despite his, kind of practical, buck up, you got to deal with this, which we'll get to here in a few minutes because it's sort of the end of the first act, but is still also a good guy, right? And so, everything is balanced out really well, I think, in terms of these four characters and kind of setting up the world that we're going to be in, and having characters that relate to each other, bounce off of each other, and we've not only do we set up a relationship between Andy and Miranda and then Andy and Emily, we also then get Andy and Nigel, and really interestingly, Nigel and Miranda as well becomes its own subplot. It's really only Nigel and Emily who don't have a relationship, there's no there in their connection, but everyone else is connected in important ways that I think especially is really being laid out in the first act.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so I kind of put it as sequence 2 starts right whenever, after the inciting incident where she's kind of got the job now and it's her first day of work and we're kind of seeing how things operate and we're kind of getting another montagey thing. She's in the thick of it and we're getting the coats being put on the desk and kind of just her basically trying to, float above water in the world of Miranda, right? And kind of to your, and I mean, that's kind of the thick of those few minutes, the first act or first beginning of sequence 2, and the kind of to your point about relationships. I really liked that we got that world, and then we went back to Andy's life at the bar, and we started getting someone like one of her friends' perspective on Miranda, plus her boyfriend, plus
The
her
guy
other
from
friend.
Mad Men that's been in nothing else
Yeah.
with this in Mad Men. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I can't think of the other girl's name that's her friend, but I like seeing that. And, obviously from that moment on, it becomes like, oh, we're going to start kind of seeing those two worlds collide, and how is Andy going to operate, and of course, how is her relationships at home going to be affected by her new job?
Yeah. I think that, some other really interesting things are just well done things about the first act is the setup of things that will become important later. So like at the 14-minute mark where Emily is showing Andy around and introducing her to everything and what her job responsibilities will be, she sets up the trip to Paris. So very early on, we know that this is going to be a thing. We don't necessarily know how important it's going to be, but it's established, right? Shortly after that, she mentions the book and says, this is the second assistant's job, but but you can't trust her. So right now, Emily's going to deliver the book. So obviously the book is going to become an important thing later on. And then all of this culminates with the first really, I think, great scene of the movie, which is when they are sort of trying to put together the looks for the photo shoot, and Andy laughs because she doesn't see the difference between the two belts, and Miranda just absolutely destroys her.
It's iconic.
Ironically, she dresses her down.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. She does put her down.
Yeah, it's iconic. I mean, like that is, again, that's one of the scenes. When I just think about this movie, this is one of the main scenes that come to mind. And I think it's so good because it is like this thing of like, we have our antagonistic force at the very least, if we don't want to call her an antagonist, but the thing that is challenging the protagonist, educating the audience and the character, I think, on something that is like, that's kind of like Andy is kind of voicing a opinion on the fashion industry, right? Like a common opinion of whatever. It's just people getting, worked up about things that don't really matter in the end or whatever. And so it is this really nice thing of like, Miranda's kind of educating us as the audience of like, actually, but it also is just like the way she delivers it is like this disappointed grandmother, but with this tinge of like, but I actually might hate you underneath this. Like, it's just this expert, scathing, slow, gentle education that is just like, that leaves Andy just like in the dirt. And I think it's just incredible. Like, it's one of the best scenes. Like, it's in Meryl Streep. I'm like, man, that's one of her best scenes for me. Like, it's just that good.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to mention is, and I had the same feeling. I watched this last night and the rest this morning when I started watching. I was like, oh, this is reminding me of Whiplash. And also I had just listened to a podcast a week ago where they mentioned Whiplash, so it was kind of already fresh in my mind. And you mentioned that you were kind of alluding that Miranda's the antagonist, right? And I think one thing that she shares that's similar to, I can't think of his character's name, J.K. Simmons' character in Whiplash, is that they have obviously goals, like they are doing their own thing, but they're more like forces of nature where they operate, you can't change them. You can't control them. You have to adapt to them. And that's kind of like the pushback. It's not like you're defeating someone and then they learn a lesson and they fail or something. It's like they're not going to change at the movie. And how does the protagonist deal with that? And that's something I see too, because obviously J.K. Simmons does not change at the end of the movie. If anything, his ideals are reaffirmed in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And same with even Miranda at the end, maybe, which we'll talk about at the end. So something I wanted to point out, it's just an interesting use of an antagonist, I guess.
Well,
is
and
force
it
of
feels
nature.
1-to-1 almost to the Not My Tempo scene, right? Like this feels like that moment where our character is being shown how much they actually know, how much room they actually have to grow, kind of thing, when they think they've kind of got it all figured out. And it is interesting. They're both iconic scenes, and even for like Meryl Streep and J.K. Simmons, iconic scenes. It's interesting how similar they are, even in how they function to the plot and for the character.
One thing I want to go back to that you mentioned in passing, Daniel, that I think is important, and again, will sort of play into sort of my thoughts about the end of the movie is that we share Andy's belief that the fashion industry is just sort of this thing that we don't care about, that it's surface, that it doesn't matter. And besides being a great personal moment of conflict between these two characters, Miranda gives us the defense of the fashion industry and why it's important and why these choices are important, and the taste making and all of this stuff that maybe we think is shallow. She boils it all down to this all filters down to the choices that you make in the clothes that you wear. And so it is important. It's not just something that's sort of easily dismissible. And I think that is something that's important, because the movie needs to feel a little bit of balance. We need to feel, especially in the middle of the movie, and again, we'll discuss this at the end, that what Miranda is doing has some sort of importance, that even if she's sort of limited to her own viewpoint, that what she's doing affects, tens of thousands of jobs, millions, probably billions of dollars worth of industry, affects the choices that almost every individual, at least in first world countries, is making about their appearance, that this is a big thing. And so I think, it does a lot of work, that scene. And I think it's really well done.
Well, it's the similar conversation I've had with people about art. Like some people are like, "Oh, you can't," or "Why would you want to work in the film industry?" or "Why do that?" And I'm like, "Well, I get it. I guess from your perspective, like I'm not plumbing or something or whatever." But also, I think that even though we're entertaining people, and we're doing a lot of other things too as well, and we do add to the economy and all these sort of things, and so there is obviously a place for art, and I think it's a similar kind of conversation that I've had with people. And obviously I didn't, it wasn't as hostile, but it was definitely, it's like the same, whenever they used to give the tour for UCA, they're like the art or the media department or whatever, I remember one of the faculty members kind of giving that speech of like, you see the credits at the end of the movie, and like those are all jobs, and like they add to the economy. And again, to me, making movies is a huge part of watching movies and experiencing that is a huge part of my mental health, and I think a huge part of the culture. And same thing with fashion. Like there is this art part to it, and it does obviously shape society in a big way, whether we probably feel it or not.
Yeah.
I do think it's an interesting argument that I think, at least on the fashion side, I think honestly the film side of this argument holds a little more weight, but it almost feels like her argument boils down to because it gives people jobs. Like that's why it's important. And I think that feels a little bit like, okay, but I mean, it's not like there are other jobs people could be having if this didn't exist, right? Like a little bit like you're arguing that your decisions maybe weren't made for you. You're picking things, but you're not really arguing for why that's important or why that is of value, other than look how much people care about it, kind of thing. And I think that is an argument. I just think honestly it's more of that, like I think the way Miranda delivers it honestly makes the argument feel a little stronger in the moment than I think it ultimately ends up being. And I think that's kind of what Andy discovers a little bit. Like that's kind of she's like, oh, I went to school. I've learned my lesson a little bit, right, in this moment. And I think her journey is at the end is kind of pulling a little bit away from that viewpoint.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right that she does pull away. Although I would say that the argument that she makes is maybe a little stronger than just the jobs, because the fact that she's saying like, the blue of your sweater is something that was like you said, chosen for you. I think part of that idea is that we do think that the clothes we choose, are our own choice, and that we are expressing our own personality through the fashion we choose to wear. Not that it's this high-end haute couture fashion, but even just, the materials of the things we choose and the colors that we think we like, those things are way more complicated, and they're not separate from these things that are happening at Runway Magazine, and that Miranda is making choices about, that they do influence us all in some way. You could still make the argument that who cares what color Andy's sweater is, and she could make that argument, but certainly the argument is there that there's a lot more influence to this than just dressing a bunch of skinny models for runway shows that don't impact the common person, and she's making the argument, no, it does impact the common person in ways that you never thought about. Anyway, one thing I want to get to that comes right after this, and I think right after this is when she ends up sort of with her friends at the bar, or maybe she's probably not. She's probably with Nate in the apartment. And she sets up one possibility of what the movie level goal is for her. And I'm kind of curious what you guys think it is too, because I think one thing about this movie is that there's actually different ways that you could think about what Andy's goal for the movie is. And the thing that she specifically says with Nate is that if she can stick it out for 1 year, then she'll have it made, that she'll have the references to get kind of any job she wants in the journalism world. And that certainly feels like a potential movie level goal. Stick it out for 1 year, right? Now, when we get, she doesn't stick it out for a year, she doesn't make it a full year. So then we'd say, okay, well, she failed at that goal. She also sort of says, she can't let Miranda get to her. So maybe another goal that's similar is, not to let Miranda drive her away, right?
I would put it as proof she belongs. Like, I think that first part is very much everyone saying you're not good enough to be here. You can't mix it here. You're not. And I think there is a little bit of that, like, in general, a lot of people, when you're told that, it makes you want to prove that person wrong, even if you don't really care about what they said you are or aren't, right? Like, there's a party that goes, and so I think to me it's this, like, yes, her external goal forward her career, her internal goal is prove to herself and to these people that she can hang with the big dogs, essentially,
I would say those two are really more the same thing.
Okay, yeah.
I would say the internal goal is to figure out her values. And to figure out whether her values align with the job that she's doing or not. But I think I think that version of the external goal, to do well at her job or to stick it out a year, is perfectly valid. But I do think that there's something deeper that the movie suggests that I almost wish it did a little bit more with, but also, again, is going to influence how I feel at the ending. And I think another possibility for the external goal for Andy is to not disappoint Miranda. I think there is something that, again, to that Whiplash comparison, that as much as she hates Miranda and as much as it drives her crazy, that she recognizes something in Miranda that is pushing her to be I don't want to say the best version of herself, because obviously some of this is very toxic when it comes to, her work hours and the way she's treated. But she also understands that, or she comes to understand as the movie progresses, that Miranda's expectations, matter in a certain sense, and that she doesn't want to disappoint Miranda. And I think there is a sense, in a way, that she wants to please Miranda. It's interesting that we have a scene where Andy meets her dad, and then of course she has to run out in the middle, which happens sort of near the end of Act 1. She has to run out on their dinner, but
slam the door on him in the taxi cab.
Oddly, we never meet her mother.
We see a picture of her. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the movie kind of never makes a big deal. So, I don't want to go so far as to say Miranda is a mother figure. Obviously, that would be a terrible mother to have. But there is sort of this female role model of, like, if you want to make it in a man's world and if you want to make it to the top, this is maybe kind of what you have to be and what you have to do. And I think there's something that attracts Andy to that, and that she doesn't want to disappoint Miranda, especially, which we'll talk about in a second, the Act 1 climax where she sort of fails and realizes that she's got to kick it up a gear. So I think that's an interesting thing. And maybe those two things can live side by side, just sort of this make it through the job, but also, don't let Miranda down, become something that the movie doesn't discuss on the surface, but at the same time, it's hard not to see it there,
I don't get the impression the movie is saying anyway, and maybe it's part of your problem with this, is that women can't make it in this world. It feels like all the men respect the women. You know what I'm saying? Maybe other than, Christian maybe is the most aloof about it, but I don't think it comes from disrespect. I think he even says she's a big girl. Like he acknowledges that she'll land on her feet no matter what.
Right.
So I think maybe, does that make sense what I'm saying? I think, world. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll push back a little bit, because I think this is the beginning of where I'm going to end up with my one criticism of the movie. And that is Nate. Nate in the end has a problem with the way Andy is doing the job. He belittles the importance of the job. He's butthurt when she misses his birthday. He's not especially supportive of anything she's doing with this. And even I think the movie forces a little bit this idea that even him and a little bit her other friends claim that she's changed, that her values have changed. And I don't think that's true. I never get the sense that Andy dislikes her friends, but she becomes committed to this job. And I do get the sense that if the gender roles were reversed, that she wouldn't come under the same kind of criticism that she does, and the thing I think about is the job that Nate has, which is he's a chef. And anyone who knows anything about the restaurant world knows that if Nate has any ambition in that world, which he clearly does, he's going to be living the same kind of life that Andy is living through this movie. He's going to be insanely busy. And in fact, if they hadn't broken up and he had gotten the job in Boston that he gets in the end, what do you think his expectation would have been?
That she would have moved with him.
That she would move with him. Exactly. So I do think underneath some of this, there is a little bit of a double standard that, because it's fashion, which is already sort of this female world and is less important than the restaurant world, for example, and because she gets so committed to it as a female that, she's supposed to be there for Nate, rather than Nate just going like, yeah, I get it, and I get there's a little bit of, you wanted to be a journalist and now you're doing this thing, but it's clearly important to Andy for whatever reason. And I could see people saying, hey, I'm not sure this is good for your mental health. You're working all these hours and she's mistreating you. But that's not exactly the angle Nate takes. He kind of starts that way, but then he kind of gets into the like, I'm not supportive of you. You're not being a very good girlfriend to me. And I think it's especially frustrating because they've set a time limit on this. Like, it's only ever supposed to be for a year anyway. And so it's sort of like, well, support her for that year and then it'll be over and then she can do whatever she wants. So I do think that the movie kind of has characters that don't support her in the way that I think she deserves to be supported. And I do think a lot of that ends up getting tied to the industry that she's in and to the fact that she's a woman. Because again, if you flipped it around to Nate's career, I think the expectations would be different.
I think in general, the movie is playing with themes that it doesn't fully finish the thought on a lot of the time, right? Like, I think it's like, even the dynamics of power and toxicity, is this what it takes to be this important or this powerful or this successful kind of things? I feel like it just kind of ends that conversation without even kind of, like, it almost, like you said, kind of makes this commentary of like, it's not worth it, even if it is necessary. kind of thing, but I don't feel like it really follows through with that. And I think it just gets messy in terms of what it's gonna leave us with in terms of these characters. And I think, I think in the same way, Whiplash leaves it in a way that's more ambiguous, but feels more intentionally ambiguous. I think the problem with this movie is it feels like it's trying to distill things down to a moral lesson that Andy learns and moves on with her life, and now she's a better person. And that is where it just gets really like we're trying to force, round holes, square pegs, all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, I think it is in terms, even just going back to like what is her goals external. I think there is a little interesting distinction between proving she can hang with the big dogs versus the year-long doing it a year, because I think she does actually prove she can do it, right? Yes. Like she proves it to herself. I can do this if I want, and it's more of the I don't want to do this anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's in terms of like, even if when I'm trying to think of like, well, what does Andy learn through this movie? Like, what is her takeaway, or how has she grown as a person? And the biggest thing is like, well, she doesn't want to be like Miranda. Like that's.
And I agree with that. And part of this we should wait to the ending. But I agree with you that part of the problem is that some of these things get confused. Because you're right. I think the idea that she doesn't want to be like Miranda is a more powerful theme that I can get on board with. The idea that she somehow sacrificed her values, or that she's letting Nate down, or being a bad girlfriend, I'm not on board with some of those themes, and they kind of get mushed together at the end a little bit. And I think maybe there's some clarity that a different ending could have done, but let's keep moving.
Sorry, small sidebar for Nate. I don't know. I watched this on Disney Plus, which apparently I'm on the ad tier now. So great. Every time there was an ad break, there was an ad with Nate, actor.
Yep, there was
current day, and he's basically, it's this like fourth wall, like, yeah, they didn't call me back for the movie. I don't get it. And then he's like, I mean, technically, I wasn't a great guy. Like, he kind of acknowledges his
that's what he says.
Problematic.
Yeah, he says that in the thing, and I wonder if that was something that he was told when he had the part, or that whenever he was like, direct.
I think that's
from the
what
director.
Bruce is.
No, I know. I'm saying, or is that something that he has realized, in 20 years, that hey, my character was problematic. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I think the movie doesn't act like Nate is problematic. The movie acts like Nate is right. And I think at the time, the audiences probably wouldn't have massively disagreed. Right. There's the way the movie kind of just papers over the cracks. It's the classic, I don't know, character becoming someone they aren't for a goal they didn't want, or whatever. We've seen this story before. So I think it's more of like, I think the discussion that Bruce is having is, the discussion about Nate and his role in this has been going on for a little bit, and I think is a part of more of the academic side of the modern conversation around this movie. So in my opinion, it seemed like he was reacting to the like, okay, yeah, my character wasn't written that good.
So
he was
I'm really
toxic.
I want to know. So these ads that were happening. I mean, what were the ads for, and how was
Starbucks?
A Starbucks commercial. I saw it 10 times probably last
10
night.
at least.
Yeah. The ad is, hey, I'm not in the sequel, even though I'd kind of like to be, because I like to get paid. But my character wasn't that great of a guy, so I probably shouldn't be in the sequel. That was the theme of the movie, the ad.
Interesting. So the movie, the advertising really directly acknowledges that. Okay.
Yeah,
yes. And it is for Devil Wears Prada too, obviously. But
it's for Devil Wears Prada.
And it's like, it is interesting too, because like, he's like at the end, he's like, what does he say? Like, call me, or like, let me know I'm available. And it is that thing of like, I don't think I've seen you in anything since this movie. So that feels a little bit too real.
I mean, he's set for life because of Entourage.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never seen that.
Well, I think that's my problem with. I mean, looking at the movie and talking about this aspect. I'm not saying anyone's wrong here. I'm just saying that I don't think the average moviegoer would have picked up on the fact that, if he had went to Boston and she was still with him, there was been an expectation of her going with him. I think that's 100% true, and I agreed with Bruce. I think that the average moviegoer wouldn't have, because everything happening at such a small moment in a conversation, they would ever picked up on that in a strong way, because the movie doesn't. It glosses over all these kind of things a little bit. So.
Well, I agree with the average, but I think there were people who disagreed, but I want to save that for the end. So
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will say too, I think there's value saying they may not have consciously realized it, but subconsciously it may have reinforced already problematic views at the very least, right? And so I think even you're right, but I think then that puts responsibility on the filmmaker and the writer to be better.
That's my point. Yeah. But also this is 2005, right? Or 2006. Yeah. I find it, again, I don't know how old I was. I was pretty young. I guess I was 14 or something. And so I don't remember the sense of we were being that cautious, you know what I'm saying, in terms of going into those kind of ideas heavily, especially like this is like a blockbuster kind of quote unquote chick flick. I don't like using the word chick flick because I watch all this shit like we all do here. But yeah, I'm agreeing with you guys. I'm just also digesting it at the same time. So
yeah. Well, let's keep moving forward.
Yes, please.
So we get to the end of Act 1, and basically it revolves around this whole thing of trying to get a flight for Miranda out of Miami.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic because it does seem impossible. There doesn't seem to be any way for Andy to get Miranda on a flight and out. But then when she finally does get back and Andy shows up in her office, there's just, again, this, I'm really disappointed in you. I thought you were going to be different than the other girls, and you're just the same.
And it bothers me that this is the catalyst for Andy getting her rear into gear, so to speak. You know what I mean? I
wish it was a little more achievable for Andy to have done it, and that she didn't quite try hard enough versus something that really does seem impossible.
Well, this is the first moment, or one of the first moments, that the movie kind of makes Miranda look intentionally unreal, like just unpleasable, or like someone you just don't want to be around or work for ever, right? And so like up to this point, it's always been like, well, her attitude is part of the job. She has to have it. That's how she got here. This is just like okay, she's just being an idiot or completely unreasonable. Like any person acting like this under any circumstances would be like, even if in the night, at that night, you're having a panic attack and you're just letting that out on someone, fine. But the next morning, when you've had a full night of sleep, you're going to wake up and still be that way. It just feels, it's non-logic. It doesn't, there's no logic to it. There's just you want to, it's an ego thing. So for that to be the thing that inspires Stanley Tucci's "you're not even trying" speech, it just doesn't connect to me. It connects if the movie is trying to fillet Miranda at this moment, and maybe it is, right? Like if it's, but it doesn't. I don't get how Andy, like the way she receives Tucci's speech, just does not connect to the incident that made it happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I think the beat is right in terms of what you're trying to do with that. That is, Andy is given a task and she fails at that task, and she thinks she's tried her hardest, and she goes to whine to Stanley Tucci, Nigel, and he says, "Are you really trying your hardest?" And she realizes she's not. That's all the way it should be.
Yes,
but I agree with you that the specific thing that she fails at is just set up as too impossible of a task, and so it doesn't. I agree with you.
Trying harder wouldn't have made a difference in that situation. Maybe in these other ones, sure. And it is a little interesting that trying harder is basically just dressing nicer. Like that is all it boils down to.
But I will say, and I actually like that a lot, because part of what Nigel's point is, regardless of the problem with the flights, is that she's saying I'm trying really hard, and what Nigel is kind of saying is, hey, there's some low-hanging fruit that you haven't even done here or attempted, which is you work at a fashion magazine, everyone around you is dressing incredibly well, and you're not even trying to do that. You're not trying to dress in the fashions or understand the fashions. and he's right about that. Like that criticism, I think, is well taken given the context of the world they live in, and also this is a comedy. You know, I mean, it's not supposed to be too serious, so of course, then creating a montage in which she gets all of this fashion, and then she shows up in the next day wearing this insane outfit that's just, you know, out of this world, that is still like etched in my brain, not just my male, you know, like it's a hot, but just like everything about it. It's class, it's beautiful, it's like I can still remember that outfit, like so it's fun, I guess, is what I'm saying, is that making her have to prove herself by wearing better clothes is part of what makes the movie fun and fits the fashion idea of the movie. And then, of course, we get new Andy, right, who shows up wearing this Chanel or whatever outfit that's completely different.
She mostly wears black, I feel like, the rest of the movie too. Oh, that's
darker colors.
Her fancy stuff is, but no, I agree too. And I think it's actually one of the best reasons and uses of the makeover montage. Usually we get the makeover montage before a girl's going to meet a guy or something, right? This is a makeover montage, and that's the whole point, is that her dress is the point. And so I think I agree, it's fun, and it's one of those things. I think the movie is, again, being a little clever, using a thing we've seen before many times, but doing it with more intentionality, or with more, like, if there's any movie that needed a makeover montage where it fit, this is the one, you know. And it is nice that she's not getting made over to impress a man, right? Like that's a nice difference than most of the time this happens.
It is funny that a man's telling her to do it, though. But
a distinctively feminine, if not gay man. I mean, yeah.
Well, I think just to boil it down, to me, obviously, it's, you know, he's just saying you don't have the right mindset, and that starts with your appearance. And so I think
you're right.
Yeah.
This is the perfect time, and this needs to happen for the movie. It's just the setup is
yeah.
Again, so they could have paid it off better if they'd done something with this whole Miranda doesn't live in reality thing. Maybe it could have done something, but
there's a version where her outfit didn't cause her not getting on the plane. I don't know how that's possible.
Right,
but I'm saying that would have been like tied to it maybe a little bit better, like because you showed up to the airplane place and you didn't look like you worked with the fashion industry. They didn't believe you. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
All right, so we kind of roll into what I would consider Act 2, even though it's relatively short at like 20 minutes. You could call it a sequence, but like I called it an act, where obviously her goal is to prove herself to Miranda, right? Miranda notices Andy's new look, and now it's like, okay, I see you're making an effort, and now there's sort of these series of tests. You know, some of them, are directly from her, some of them are not. But the first thing, of course, is that she now is entrusted with delivering the book to Miranda's house, which she of course fails miserably at, right?
Again, it feels, I mean, they're always operating on the least amount of information possible, which it feels, again, impossible. Which table with the flowers? I guess you could have asked Emily, which table is it, or whatever, which closet across the staircase. I do think, obviously, huge mistake going to the twins, or that's a blatant. It could have been any table that was the wrong table. That's better than giving it to the twins or going upstairs, obviously. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I do think that whole thing works much better than the flight thing, because
100%.
For one, yes, there's a bunch of tables, but there is a table. She finds the closet, no problem. There is a table right next to the closet, but she lets herself get overwhelmed other tables. And so rather than using logic and common sense and putting it on the table, she lets herself get overwhelmed. And then the twins, who obviously from the audience perspective, we can tell that they are trying to trick her, but she's in such panic mode that she listens to them, and she's sort of not using her critical thinking. And so, if you're going to be Miranda's assistant, you need to be smooth under pressure. You need to be able to think through things and make right choices. and she doesn't let herself do that. She lets herself get influenced. She makes the wrong choices. And then obviously she brings the book upstairs and screws that up. Right.
No, it's so much better. I mean, this is what that moment with the airplane should have felt like, where she could have made the right decision. She didn't. Now, it's not necessarily a character flaw. She messed up in the moment, right? She got overwhelmed. She didn't listen. She didn't follow the plan. She didn't just do what the plan is and keep to the plan. But yeah, it does feel so much. It also just feels more realistic in terms of like that people make those kinds of mistakes under pressure, even though the stakes are like what you walked up, but the pressure of your job. And some people react the way Miranda does to those kinds of mistakes in people.
Right.
So I think just all of it feels so much more, just it makes sense, or like you can imagine it happening. But yeah, no, I mean,
well,
and then
also in a very vulnerable moment.
Yes,
right.
That husband,
yes.
and
which is paid off later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's paid off later, but also even though we're not super sympathetic to Miranda, although I will say that the sequel is more sympathetic to Miranda. I think when you step back and think about it, that you can understand that a person in her position is going to be incredibly protective of their private life because it's so easy for that to get used against her. So in a sense, we can understand why she doesn't want people coming up the stairs and why she's trying to create this barrier between her private life and her public life, and why she wants the book delivered downstairs, So even though, we go, oh, this is a little thing, we can kind of understand, if we think about it a little more, why it's so important to Miranda that she doesn't get, especially because of what Andy ends up witnessing.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think it's one of my favorite moments, or just one of the most even surprising moments for Miranda's character, is just showing how much she cares about someone else's opinion of her, and that she's kind of acting like her assistants act around her husband a little bit, right? And it's this moment of like, she's not this unshakable, just like nice, emotionless queen, or like completely in control person. There's parts of her life where she feels insecure and she feels desperate or like, whatever it is. And I think it's one of those moments where I think the movie is getting close to commenting on a little bit of this idea of what is the cost of success and power, how much is the toxic part of that necessary, or however much that goes. I think it's like getting close to kind of doing something there, and I think it is interesting where it leaves. I don't have a problem with this, because I think even the way it ends, the way Miranda and her husband's arc tied off at the end, I think works well for it. But it is just like one of the most, I think, just interesting moments of the movie, where it's kind of presenting you, okay, here's this very realistic version of a powerful person that we've probably all interacted with or at least seen on TV to some degree before. But let's show you something that you usually don't know about these people or see about these people, but is often probably true, right? Like that they do have, even if they exert this, I have everything under control to the public, there's all these relationships, so maybe it's their parents or their whatever, but there's other relationships where they aren't in a position of power, and we're not used to seeing that. I just think, you have to have that. So you have the scene with her in the hotel room at the end, and particularly to see her smile at the end, you have to know that she's a human a little bit before you see her smile at the end. So yeah.
Well, and also it's important to note that we've been talking about this idea of gender roles and stuff. The reason why she's having problems with her marriage is that her husband can't handle the fact that his wife is more powerful than he is. And that's the root of their problem. And so I think that
the public opinion,
seeing that her marriage is having problems because her husband can't handle her position makes perfect sense. And I did like seeing that. So I think that ties in, really nicely. And then, of course, I think one of the really fun parts of the movie then is Miranda's like, okay, you showed some effort, you're dressing well, you got some responsibility, you screwed it up. So here's the test, right? Yeah. You have to get me the next Harry Potter book or you're fired.
Before we get there, I do want to mention that one little scene where she goes to her friends at the bar and she's giving them gifts, and then they're like, oh, this is so great. And then they're immediately pushed up against the moment where she's getting called, and they have this. It's like the first kind of animosity between her and the friends where she calls them assholes. And so I think that is important because it's like they love the gifts, but they don't love what the gifts cost them. You know what I'm saying? And
I think it backs up kind of Bruce's problem at the end too, where it's like they are kind of being assholes. And I feel like the movie, to some degree, is trying to make it seem like Andy's life is being taken over by Miranda, and it's bad for her. It's bad for her friends. But I mean, the friends are dicks in this scene. Like, I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, to me, it's like it has it's honestly the same thing a bit at the end with Nate, where it has the opposite effect on me, where I'm like, well, they really are being assholes.
Yeah, because the idea is that in the end, it's important to Andy, and whether you think it should be important or not, it has become important to Andy, and it's important to her to do this job to the best of her ability and her capability, and they're potentially screwing that up, and that's why she gets upset. And yeah, that's not cool from them. Yeah.
Well, and it just feels like it's a continuation of that perspective of like, oh, this is just a much ado about nothing in the fashion industry, right? Like, it feels like it's a continuation and they are kind of presented as these like young, progressive, smart people that get together at bars and talk about social issues or something. Like they have this kind of like, we're the real humans in this world versus the robots and the systems and all that. And so I think it is interesting that I think you're right. It does show them being assholes to Andy and her taking offense at that. But I think the movie, it feels a little more sympathetic to them in this moment than I think feels good. I think that's my issue, is it feels like it's aligned with this, oh yeah, what does this matter anyway kind of perspective at that point.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, I mean, you know, I think to help that, to make them feel less sympathetic, they should be clued in a little bit more. I think the movie doesn't do that in terms of, you know, she's in the thick of it every day, so her friends don't understand. They don't understand the world. They didn't get that moment with Miranda where she's dressing her down and telling her how fashion actually affects them. And so they're ignorant, right? They're uneducated to the experience that she's going through. I do think to make them feel less sympathetic, they should be maybe more clued in and like get Annie's perspective more on it, make a stronger, Annie to make a stronger case to her friends. That way, whenever that scene does happen, they feel less sympathetic, right? They feel more asshole-ish because they should know at this point. And I think the movie kind of treats them as they brushed off the entire time up to this point, and so they're not as educated as they could be, I guess, about it. You know, so
yeah. Well, they kind of feel like, oh yeah, this is nice, but what, you're selling your soul for this? Like, is
right.
kind of the tone of it. And I feel like the movie is kind of agreeing with it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Definitely agree with you. At least in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, The Impossible Task. Yeah. Steak in 15 minutes and the unpublished manuscript for Harry Potter, which sounds impossible.
It's hard to go back to that time because I don't feel like it's weird. I mean, Game of Thrones, but even now that's, you know, never going to get finished. But like, I remember a time when like the next Harry Potter book releasing was like lines outside of Barnes and Noble overnight. You know, it was like a movie release. I don't feel like books happen like that nowadays, or haven't in a while.
Since let's hope in the future we have that again. But you're right.
No, and so like I think it is a funny thing, like remembering back to 2006. Remember, oh yeah, man, the new Harry Potter was like the thing, and it is, you know, it almost feels a little easier nowadays. Like, it doesn't feel as impossible thinking about a very powerful person getting a book before it's released and getting to read it. Like, I feel like we kind of understand that those are the perks of power. You get you get what other people can't have, like, right? Like that. But I think going back in time, it probably felt more like, oh my God, how is she going to do that? You know what I mean?
I would want that task,
but it's great. It's a fantastic sequence. And
I mean, if we want to nitpick, you know, it is Christian who manages to get the manuscript, but it is also Andy starting to figure out how this world works.
Yeah.
It's a world of favors. It's a world of who knows who. And yes, even though a man gets it and then tries to use it to his advantage on her later, she works it well. She works the system. And I mean, no matter what, it's just so satisfying, you know, when when she delivers the manuscript, and then
the twins
Miranda
already have it. Yeah.
out. Yeah, the twins already have it. This is just for our files. And she's got the smile, and you're just like, yes, like you just feel so good for her after everything she's been through, for the first half of the movie.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about her meeting with Christian, did we? Her first meeting. But we don't have to go super in depth, but obviously it's interesting. The movie's, I said rom-com in the beginning. It has like these two relationships. Like, does she pick him or does she pick him? But the movie it's not about that. You know what I'm saying? It's not really about them, even though they are integral. So yeah.
Yeah, there is a relationship subplot, but it's almost like a third level goal underneath.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. So right after she delivers the copy to Miranda, this is where she I can't remember who she's talking to, but it's obviously before she's missed Nate's birthday, which is coming. But this is the first time where I think Nate is like, where she has to say, like, I'm still the same Andy. I can't remember if it's her friends or Nate, but like reassuring them that she hasn't changed. And the fact that they've accused her of anything, again, to me, it's just a little problematic because she's working really hard. But is she like thinking that she's better than her friends or mistreating them in any way? No, she's not. I mean, other than the fact that when her phone rings, she puts it first.
She does choose Nate over a potential journalism job, also like she's a good person is my point, like it's not like she's not trying to do both. Like, she's just disregarding her boyfriend or friends. And so I think that's a good little moment for her too. Like, well, she's trying to do it all. Like, she's not like being this person
her
that they
values haven't changed.
They're not painting her as something she's, the movie's not painting her something she's not. She is making these choices whether her friends see it or not. Yeah.
Now, I feel like that you could have done this with just a little bit an adjustment of like, if this was changing Andy's perspective on what it takes to be successful at all in life. And like, this is the kind of work hours, and this is the kind of dedication and the kind of loyalty, and like, this is the only way to do it. If that was becoming her philosophy and people were like, hey, whoa, I don't think that's right, whatever, that I feel like you could have done a similar thing without it having this kind of problematic thing of like, people are reacting to something she wants that's temporary. Right. And so that could have worked if she's like, well, I think Miranda's right about everything, in a more nuanced way. And people being like, wait, hold on. That's not how you used to think. This used to be a necessary evil. And now you think this is the way it all should be.
Yeah.
Question: if it was reversed, I'm just curious your guys' thoughts. If the man was out working and the wife girlfriend was at home making or having a birthday, and they showed up late and they missed it, would it feel worse or than what we saw in the movie? Like, I'm saying, would there be any type of, the woman her birthday got missed, and so the man was working a job? I'm just asking what you guys think about that. Would there be a
lot of ways the expectation would be that if a man is working at this level, that the woman should just deal with it, He's
the breadwinner, so she shouldn't.
Well,
complain.
I'm saying would the audience be sympathetic to the woman more if the man? You don't think so?
It was the wife.
I think they're more sympathetic to the man because gender roles tell you that women do the things the man is waiting on. He's waiting there to be like celebrated and given gifts and fed or whatever. And that's what in the typical, gender roles, the woman's role is. So it's not only that she missed his birthday, it's that she's failing to be a woman in society. Like, I feel like that's the problem that it's indicating.
And they do try to give Nate a little bit of like, I'm not holding this job against you exactly. He does have some lines where he tries to soften it, but it's not quite enough. And especially because, and by the way, I think we moved into Act 3 now. I think the Harry Potter book is the climax of Act 2. And now she's becoming the new Emily, right? I mean, we start off Act 3 with basically, even though they don't call it that, they're going to it's sort of the equivalent of the Met Gala, which just happened a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of irony with that in Devil Wears Prada too. But anyway, they're going to the Met Gala, and Emily has a cold, And so now Andy's having to become sort of the new Emily. And I think the question is, can she maintain, her priorities while being the new Emily? And really the movie sort of indicates that she fails at that, right? I mean, even though she's the whole time she's planning on being there for Nate, she's got all this stuff for Nate, but then she's forced at the last minute to go to this gala, which she performs great at and is beginning to prove that she's sort of better than Emily at Emily's job. But then Christian shows up, and I think this is what you were alluding to, Donavon, is like, hey, come back in and meet my editor. I've read your pieces. Like, you can further your career. And she's like tempted. And then she's like, no, I have to go. Like, she chooses her boyfriend over advancing her journalism career. And then he goes home and she goes home and he's whining about it,
She loses twice, yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. That's a great way to put it. She ends up losing twice. She can't please anybody, which really sucks for her,
Yeah. I put I had a question like around, I think 107. I was like, low point of film. And then I was like, no, it's not quite, we're not quite there yet. But cause I was just kind of writing stuff down, but yeah. So after that, obviously,
it's almost like the movie's asking, okay, you can do it. What's the cost now? Right. Like that's like the first part of this act of like, you can do it. Now let's look at what the cost is. But again, the way it performs the cost is underwhelming. And so it makes it feel a little weak.
I think because the cost, here's the thing, and here's I think where we're beginning to lead as we're getting into the second half of the movie, is that a lot of the beginning and middle of the movie has tied the cost to her relationship with Nate. And I think that's the mistake, because it feels sexist in the end that Nate complains and that there's a sense that she walks away from the job partly because of the pressure Nate and her friends have put on her, when I think, Daniel, you're right, that in the end, she sees that Miranda is not a loyal person and she doesn't want to become like that, which I think is a much stronger reason for her to walk away. But the problem is the movie hasn't been setting that idea up. I mean, yeah, Miranda's kind of a terrible person, but she's not betraying anybody in the way that she betrays Nigel at the end.
Yeah.
And so they make it ride on her relationship with Nate. And then right at the end, they kind of switch it up on you. But your whole impression of why she's leaving isn't just, oh, Miranda's a not loyal person. It's your accumulation of all of this. And a lot of it feels unfair.
Miranda's, you did the same thing to Emily. No, she didn't.
Yeah.
Emily was sick.
Yeah.
Anyone else would have been hired for that if Andy wasn't there. That is
And
not
she
the
got
same
hit by
as
a
betraying
car.
your friend. You told them, I'm going to do this, and then you don't do it.
It wasn't. And so I think part of that moment, and I know we're jumping ahead, is that they almost felt like they realized, oh, we had her betray Nigel 3 minutes ago, and now she's about to quit, and we've got to make it feel stronger that she's going to quit. And so then they forced this idea that she treated Emily the way Miranda's treating Nigel. Therefore, she's becoming the bad version of Miranda. And it's all just a little quick, and it's all too fast, and it's all too forced. And again, they've let another plot line, the whole Nate and friend plot line, carry what's the problem with working there. And again, it's not a problem. It's a problem for her friends. It shouldn't be a problem for her. And that substitution, I think, is where I had a little bit of a problem. But so yeah, after she performs well at the Met Gala, and then Nate just kind of blows her off, then she really does become the new Emily, right? Because it's right after that basically Miranda tells Andy that she's going to Paris and Emily's not, and it's a combination of Emily underperforming and her cold, right? Although it's really weird, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. It almost undercuts what we were just saying, because theoretically, Miranda could have been right about about Andy doing the same thing to Emily, but then Emily gets hit by the car, right?
That's what I was saying. She really, there is no choice. It's like, well, I don't think maybe Emily. There's an argument Emily could walk around in Paris on crutches, but she really couldn't, right? And so I think again, this is the situation back to the airplane thing where it's like there really is no choice. It's like, well, she literally can't make it, and so I'm not putting anyone out, even though I guess she had made the choice. She did make the choice internally because she did call her technically before she got hit by the car. So but it's still not a choice.
Well, it's weird because I think it would make the ending stronger if they did make her tell Emily she's not going.
Of course.
And so it has
without the car accident.
Without the car accident.
It's like you removed the inner conflict for her. Like she has this. She has this inner conflict. Can I betray my friend? Can I do? And then all of a sudden, I don't have to worry about it. And it's just
exactly.
We're at the end of the movie. This should be the point where you're having to make those decisions.
They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to keep Andy likable, and yet they're trying to put her in a situation where she's taken on Miranda's values.
And it's still, even if she did make that choice, I still don't think it's a great choice. It's like, do you want to keep your job? Or, I mean, it's like, you said they're friends. I don't think they're that great of friends.
Yeah. No, in fact, the way Emily treats her is pretty shitty.
It's pretty shitty.
Why shouldn't she go to Paris?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, it's not like, if your boss says, hey, you're going to get fired or this other person's going to get fired and you have a rent and a mortgage, and it's like, okay, I guess the other person gets fired, I guess. I don't know. So it's not a choice, really.
Well, and it's also interesting, too, because... when Miranda makes Andy tell Emily, she's actually already promoted Andy, because right in the scene before, and it is a great moment, she walks in and Andy stands up to take her coat, and
she throws the coat,
turns and she throws it onto Emily's desk. And so she, in essence, has promoted Andy through that action and put Andy into the first position over Emily. So she's done that. And then immediately she calls Andy into the office and says, you need to tell Emily what happened. And then again, as you pointed out, then immediately after that, Emily gets hit by the car. And then for the first time, they start trying to throw in this idea, which again feels very forced. I didn't have a choice, right? It becomes sort of the line that shows that Andy is not, living up to her own moral expectations when she's talking to Emily in the hospital. She says, I didn't have a choice. And then later on, when she's talking to Nate, I think when they're breaking up, she says it again, I didn't have a choice. So suddenly they're trying to, again, kind of push this idea where she's not taking responsibility for her own actions and she's just blaming her boss for everything. But it almost feels a little too late to sort of develop that idea as what she's been doing, because she really hasn't. And even when Emily says to Andy, or Andy says to Emily, I didn't have a choice. It's not really a matter of a choice or not. It's just that Emily can't do the job.
Yeah.
And plus, Andy's been doing the job better. And as you pointed out, Emily hasn't been treating Andy well.
No, there's no reason for she should have loyalty other than Andy's a good person, right? Like that's the reason she shows loyalty, because even the end where she like calls her and gives her all the outfits feels like this really weird, like, let's just make Andy look better and more nice. But it has this, Emily, we like Emily because Emily Blunt's great and her character has some great lines, but she's not a likable person in the movie. And so it's this weird reward thing for someone. It never gave us a reason to think she deserved a reward other than we should feel sorry for her because Miranda's mean. You know what I mean? Like it feels underbaked.
Yeah. And it's really funny, and we're sort of rolling into the Act 3 climax, which is Andy and Nate breaking up. And we've been pretty critical about the movie so far, but really I think the criticism is the underlying theme the movie is trying to deal with, because the surface level is so much fun.
It's entertaining as hell.
And everything is great with what's happening with Emily and Andy ending up going to Paris. And again, all of the fashion and everything that Andy's wearing and her chance to go to Paris. I mean, it's a ton of fun. So I do want to sort of at least remind us and bring us back that we all actually really like this movie a lot. And it's just that this underlying theme just gets confused and underbaked and creates some underlying issues. But the surface is just, I mean, it's like fashion, right? I mean, it's just everything's so fun about it. And then, you can dig into fashion and realize, oh, this is all being made by child labor in third world countries. Not so fun after all, Is
that what the sequel's about, Bruce? I haven't seen it. No.
But on the surface, well, actually, there's a little bit of that, but the surface is great, and then we shouldn't underestimate how fun the surface is, right? But
I think that's a problem. That happens all the time when we do these movies. We do movies we love and that are amazing films, and that oftentimes don't get much criticism because of how amazing they're so watchable and they're so fun. And I think we're bringing let's look a little deeper. And so of course we're bringing up all the problems. I mean, the same thing happened with the Dark Knight and Batman Begins podcast. You listen to that and you might think we don't like those movies, right?
That was mostly me, by the way.
I remember.
Listen, the one that got deleted was the one where I had the biggest issues. That's fine. But I think it's a fantastic movie. I mean, all the things we said, there's not a bad performance. Well, Nate is whatever, but that was his writing. He had problems.
It's not his fault.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like everything, it's just a fun movie. It is a fun, thrilling, exciting movie. Just the editing, and I didn't love the score. Feels old to me in a way I didn't love, but it works perfectly with the editing and it works perfectly with the pacing. I mean, this movie zips by in a really just digestible way. So fantastic movie. And are we pointing out ways we think it could be better? Yes, but there's not my favorite movies have ways they could be better, and I could point them out. So it's not an indictment of the quality. In many ways, it's saying the quality is so good in all these other places. There's just these little areas that feel a little underwhelming in comparison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost like if this was a worse movie, we wouldn't care about the themes. Yeah. Who cares? But it's the fact that it's such a good movie that we care enough to dissect it a little further.
Yeah. So then we get to the final act in Paris. Her act goal here to me is a little confusing. I came up with figure out who she wants to be, what values that she has. But even here, it gets a little confusing because, she finds out after a few minutes in Paris, that Miranda's going to get kicked off of being the editor of Runway. And she shows generally the same values she's had all the way, which is she's loyal to Miranda, and she tries everything she can to help Miranda find out what's going on. And of course, she doesn't realize that, of course, Miranda's, 5 steps ahead of everybody else. And it does work in the sense that when you compare her attempts at loyalty to Miranda and then seeing Miranda not be loyal to Nigel, and then she compares those two things, it gives her a reason to leave. But at the same time, again, we've already talked about all the complications that feels kind of watered down by the time we get there. But yeah, anyway.
No, yeah, it's like her, in some ways she's accomplished her internal goal in terms of like, I can do this. It's been proven to me. She's lost her external goal because she lost her boyfriend, right? Like and I guess like there's a different version of this movie where it ends with them getting back together, right? And so maybe that's what the movie's thinking it's setting you up for. But it almost is this act of, well, the character got what they wanted, so now they got to reap the rewards of it a little bit and see what it will cost them to stay doing it or something like that. It is weird. And then, it is interesting how what's interesting about it is that it works when you're watching it, but when you start dissecting it, it feels a little weird. But just the comparison of as soon as Andy heard anything that could be, you know, threatening to this person she was loyal to, she did everything in her power to stop it. And in fact, this person doesn't deserve their loyalty because they're not loyal to anyone else. And, you know, it again, the conundrum is that it works when you're watching it. You don't go, hey, what's going on? You go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, cool. But when you dissect it, it is a little bit like, I don't quite know what this character is doing or you know, where they are and why they're doing it.
One thing I do want to point out is Nigel's, you know, obviously there's like the toast scene, which again, my favorite relationship is Nigel and Andy. I think I just love Stanley Tucci so much, and it's just so endearing watching him like spin her around, and I love Stanley Tucci so much, man. I would like to have like dinner with that man or something. But there's a line from him where he says that I'll actually get to go to Paris and see Paris, right? And I think that's kind of a theme. I think I don't know if I really talk about it. It's kind of in there underlying, but essentially like I'm not living, like, right, like my job is my life, and I don't actually get to live.
Well, he says make my own choices, right? He's like, I get to make my own choices.
Yeah, and so the movie's kind of presenting that moment, right? Like, hey, this isn't a good thing, this life. You know, that's kind of what it's kind of saying there. I do want to add, before you guys comment on that, it is funny that he says, I'll actually have to go to Paris and see Paris. And, you know, he's a gay man, and so he's more feminine than, say, Christian. And then also Emily and Andy are in the same boat as him, as that they don't get to see Paris because they're working. But Christian, he has a line that says, oh, I know everything about Paris. I know these streets like the back of my hand. And so that's interesting. That's a fun little nod. You know, I think that was on purpose, obviously, but
But yeah, you know, in a lot of ways, that the act is working well. We get all the fun and glamour, glory of all the photogs taking Andy's picture because she's with Miranda. Nigel complimenting Andy's look, you know, like you said, spinning her around. Nigel's getting the job. She goes on the date with Christian. Miranda's getting divorced, you know, so we're kind of seeing all of these things that are happening. So there's like a lot that's going on in the act. But then Christian shows his true colors, you know, and even says at one point that you've crossed over to the dark side, you know, and she's sort of trying to resist that. And when she finds out that, you know, he's going to get, you know, Jacqueline's going to get the job, and then Christian is going to be the head of, you know, editorial content. And then she's off to try to save the job. And I love the moment because, you know, again, we've been a little critical that maybe it's not as feminist as it could be, but, you know, Christian's like, it's a done deal, baby. Like, settle down. And she's like, I'm not your baby.
Yeah, that's great.
You don't
great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I would just want to say, you know, Donavon, you brought up a good point, and I think maybe that Stanley Tucci moment does somewhat bring up a more connective tissue. Is that up to this point, up to getting to Paris, it's kind of shown the people around Miranda like they're living their best life by working for Miranda, right? Like they are getting to do things they'd never get to do. Or
well, that's Miranda's thesis at the end. Everyone wants to be us. Yeah.
Right. Yes, but at the same time, this last act reveals that they're actually kind of miserable because of it, right? Like I feel like that's kind of the reveal. It in some ways the connecting reveal. Even Miranda, she's getting a divorce.
Yeah,
she's not on top of the world, right?
Price.
Say what?
Well, there's a price.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
to this level of success.
Yeah, and I think, but even it's. I think it goes beyond. Oh, there's a price to it. It almost goes to it's vapid, right? Level of like, are these people actually happy? Are these people actually?
Are they delusional? Because Nigel's
yes. Are they?
I'm hopeful that she will pay me back. I haven't seen the second one, so I don't know. But
yeah. It's like this thing of like. Stanley Tucci's character presents the whole movie as someone that loves his role and is living, you know, is living out his potential, right? And at the end, you realize he's miserable, and he's been miserable the whole time, and he's still going to keep being miserable because he's hoping it'll all pay off.
I'm not sure it's miserable is the right word. Yeah, the right word. Yeah.
I think that he's expecting, I think he actually loves a lot of what he does, but he expects there to be a payoff for some of it, which he does not get. and that is a disappointment. But I don't think he's miserable in his job. I mean, I think it's just clear that, just for instance, every time he has to dress and sees Andy in these clothes, that he loves he loves fashion. He loves the job. He even gives a speech early on that, when at the end of Act 1, that, as this kid growing up in Indiana or whatever, his life was desperate, and that runway is what saved him,
Right. But I think that's different to me, saying he loves fashion versus he loves what his life has become. Right. Like, yes, he loves interacting with fashion. I mean, I think there's a lot of analogies to like filmmakers, right? Like, there's a lot of people that love movies and loves telling stories, but the grind of the industry puts them in a place where they're not actually happy people, even if they're doing their dream job. Right. Well, so I think, to me, it's like this presenting of, like, when he says, I get to make my own choices. Yet that, to me, is the real revealing line of, like, he does not feel free at all. Right. Well, he is.
But that doesn't mean he's miserable. But I think you're right that this points to the real tension of the movie. And again, it sort of factors into going to be my last thoughts about the ending, that the movie never quite resolves, because Miranda says herself, like, if I'm not doing this job, kind of what am I, unless I'm mixing that up with the sequel. But like, to me, it's clear that this is her life, Now, we can say, does she have good work-life balance? No. Is her life screwing up her relationships? Yes. Is she born and breathes to do the job that she has? Yes. And so I don't think we can exactly say that she's miserable. It's just that
I don't think she's unhappy.
When we think about the cost of those kind of jobs, I think what we're left with is the jobs probably aren't worth the cost, but that doesn't mean that the jobs aren't incredibly fulfilling in themselves. It's just not right that they come with such high costs, and that the solution is not to not love the job. The solution is that there should be more balance in the jobs. I mean, even when you look at Andy, as much as it's constantly having to take the call, having to run out of things, I get the sense that she's really fulfilled and challenged by this job. Up until the point where she quits because she sees the betrayal, not because of the hard work, but because of the betrayal.
Yeah.
She seems like she loves the job, that she is going to stay with it, and that it's challenging and it's exciting, and that, it can lead to amazing things, and you do meet amazing people. And whatever you think about fashion, she's meeting the very top people in fashion who are these amazing artists and creators. And yeah, there's lots of great things about what she's doing, but yeah, the price is very high. And the movie doesn't, I think, quite grapple with how to say, these are great jobs, and in some ways can be very fulfilling, yet at the same time, the cost is very high. And what should you do about that? Right.
I feel like the ending is
a little, by the way. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the ending is, or the movie feels like at the end it's saying, hey, this is the cost of this high of success. Like, it's almost saying, like, this is what you have to be. Like, even Miranda, if she had not betrayed her friend, she would been fired.
Yeah.
She would no longer have her identity in her career, right? So it feels like the movie is saying, no, this is actually what it takes to be this successful, but the cost is that you become, if you want to go psychology, science tells us that the most happy humans are in long-term stable relationships. So at the very least, psychologically, these people are not getting what makes most of us happy and content as humans, right? They're trading success and the opinion of others for contentment and love and relationship, right? So I think the problem is the movie is saying, yep, that's the only way you get this successful. That's just the way it is. And if you want that, you're going to have to sacrifice these things that make you like a happy, content person. And that's just the way it is. So that's why Miranda or Andy chooses not to do this. So I feel like I disagree personally. Like, I think it is possible to be really, really successful and treat people not toxically, right? Like, and have a balance.
Yeah.
And so I feel like in some ways, Whiplash, again, it feels better because it just stops short of trying to draw a conclusion about these things and kind of just lets you see them and kind of what do you think? Who do you think was happy? Like, what do you think happened after the end of Whiplash? Did he get in the car with his dad and realize that this wasn't worth it? Or like, you don't know. You don't know exactly. It could have gone a many different ways, right? And I feel like that's the power of that movie, is that it presents these ideas without acting like it's figured it all out. And I think this movie acts like, well, actually, yeah, that's what it takes to be powerful. And if you don't want it, if you want it, you're going to see what the cost is, but you'll be a miserable person and it's not worth it.
It's really tough. And I think you're partly right about Whiplash, but I'll also say that in Whiplash, he does get his moment of greatness. I don't think has been whether he has this greatness in him. Now, you're right that in order to maintain that greatness for the rest of his life, maybe the cost will be too high and he'll end up a broken man. Although he admits himself he'd rather be dead at 40 of an overdose and have achieved greatness. Now, do you believe what he's saying or not? Who knows? That's said in the heat of a moment, and maybe if he actually lives that life, he would decide he was wrong about it. But he does get his moment of greatness. And in a way, Emily doesn't, you know what I mean? And I still can't help but think Andrew's a guy and she's a woman, and, she has to sort of choose, the moral ground, which I'm not saying she shouldn't choose the moral ground, because again, I think it makes sense that in the end, the price is too high. But, I'll just say, when I was done watching the movie, I was like, I wanted her to keep the job.
Sure.
I really did. I wanted her to keep the job. And I know that over time, like, a lot of women were like, why did she have to give up the job? Like, men get to keep that job, And again, I understand the idea of the morals and the fact that she's not loyal to Nigel. But in the end, she has to give up the job, and it just feels unfair. And it feels like, again, because of all the baggage with Nate that had been brought up until that point, when she meets with Nate at the end, she basically says, like, I was wrong. And I'm like, no, you weren't wrong. Like, you finally found out that the price of this was a higher price than you wanted to pay.
Yeah.
But you weren't wrong for wanting it. You weren't wrong for being a part of it. You just got to a point where you finally saw what the end vision was, but it acts like everyone else already knew what that was. And I don't think that's true. They had a different reason why they didn't like it. It wasn't because they knew Miranda was a bad person. It was because they just didn't like that she was working so hard and was gone all the time. And I was like, and for me, it was just like, you should have gotten to keep that job. Like,
So I agree. I think it does feel like, how do you end this movie if she doesn't do that, though, a little bit? Like, the way everything has been set up.
You have to end the movie the way it ends. I totally agree.
Yes. Like, it just had to be a different movie before to make an ending like that work. But, I do think there is a slight moment of glory. It's much lower key, but the moment Miranda says, I see myself in you, to me is the, like, okay, you've done more than just impress her. You've made her like you. You've made her believe in you, right? Like, that is what could be the higher echelon of working for Miranda, other than she decides she might want to mentor you and, like, make you her successor, right? Like, that feels like in the vein. And so I do think there is that, and I do think there is a little bit of, like, it's not only the betrayal, it's that part too. It's the, like, you're okay with this, and in fact, I think you can be me, and I'm going to help you become me, kind of thing, right?
It's sort of the ending that I think both works and doesn't work all at the same time. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is partly, I think her goal is to get Miranda's approval. And it's not a coincidence that sitting in the cab in the climax of the movie, she gets Miranda's approval. The problem is that the approval has two sides of it. One is, you're amazing at this job. You did everything that you could you're loyal, you're hardworking, you're smart, you're intelligent, you have all of these amazing capabilities. And then, but then we're left with this sort of forced ending, which is also, you're like me, which is you'd betray, you'd stab your friends in the back in order to get ahead. And that's the part where that resonates with her in that moment, where she's like, no, but I don't think I'm like you. I don't think I could do what you did to Nigel. And then she says, well, you did it to Emily. So the whole thing gets a little just forced and confused, because part of it is like, and part of it works in the sense of like, yeah, it can have two meanings at the same time. And that can be really cool in a movie where things are complicated like that. But also then it's problematic because it does feel so rushed, and she's being accused of something that I don't think is accurate, in terms of, like, we all agreed that she didn't really betray Emily. But she did get her approval. And then, of course, just in case you don't think the approval matters, she then goes and applies for this job, right? And
yeah, that is interesting.
And the guy gets the facts and says, she was my biggest disappointment, and you'd be a fool not to hire her, which, is in a way the most moving part of the whole movie. And when she says she was my biggest disappointment, it's a compliment. It's not an insult. It's a compliment. And she says, you'd be a fool not to hire her. And you even see it in Andy, right? Andy's reaction isn't like, oh, screw Miranda. Like, she's genuinely happy and moved that Miranda feels that way about her, which to me shows that she wanted Miranda's approval all the time, even after the betrayal, and she's even still happy with it. So yeah, there's just this. It's
so messy,
Yes, it's messy.
Because again, the movie feels like at the end it is saying the whole time, this level of success only comes at the expense of others. Right? Like, you cannot get here unless you're willing to betray people, forsake relationships, have no work-life balance, whatever, right? Like, that's the cost. But then in the end of the movie, it's like, but wasn't it worth it? Didn't it help you? Like, yes, this is bad and this is evil, and you decided you didn't want this. But at the end of the day, you kind of needed her, and she kind of helped you, and you got out of this what you intended to, which was a good reference to get any other job, right? So it is just a weird, like, it doesn't want to commit.
Well,
almost.
The external goal that Bruce mentioned in the very beginning was she needs to last a year so she can get a recommendation. So it's mixed. She doesn't last a year, but she gets the recommendation.
Right.
But she does prove that she's worth. Yeah, it's just it. But again, if it wasn't trying to hammer home this, like, this is toxic and no one should want to, it feels like it's trying to make a moral statement about success and what it takes, and like how people are. And listen, Miranda types in successful positions are common, right? The domineering personalities tend to rise faster in some contexts than others, right? And it's kind of the system ends up rewarding toxicity at times, right? And so I think in some ways Miranda is a prototype for something, especially in the film world, we're all very familiar with. The drama queen, drama king, kings that are surrounded by yes men and do whatever they want, right? And so I think it feels like it is trying to almost just make this statement about these people are bad for society, or like they aren't, whatever it is. But then at the end, it doesn't make that statement. It kind of walks it back.
I think that the positive interpretation is that this is all complicated, right? That you can want a lot of this stuff, and that there's a good side to it, but also there's a bad side to it. And that Andy can want Miranda's approval while at the same time seeing that this job requires her to do things that are morally questionable, that people shouldn't have to do. But she sort of has to do it. And also too, there is kind of going back, it's a subtle thing, and it does get back to sort of like the female CEO versus the male CEO. There is this sense, and at one time, Miranda, I think, kind of says it out loud, which is like, I'm the only person who can do this job, right? No one can do this job but me, and this job is important. I believe it's important to the world. So I'm going to do what it takes to keep this job because I believe I'm the only person who can do it. Now you can say, oh, that's just ridiculous, and you're overly
Ego.
confident to do the job. Or you can go, well, maybe she's right. Maybe no one else can do this job but her, and she does need to do what she needs to do to keep the job. And I'll point out one other thing, which is part of why she's being pushed out of her job, is because they think she's too old.
Yeah. I mean, the very classic sexism, ageism thing, for sure.
Yeah. Now they're going to bring in another woman, but she's going to be younger, and presumably she'll be a little more under the thumb of I forget the guy's name, Norm, or whoever is the publisher. So I think the positive spin on all of this is acknowledging the messiness and complexity of success at the highest levels, and the ways in which it's worth it, but also it's not worth it, and the choices that you have to make about whether it is or isn't worth it. And I think the movie would have been so much stronger if they had just sort of kept Nate out of the equation and let Andy make the choice purely based on the idea of, am I willing to have to do these things that are going to harm other people or not, versus like, oh, I wasn't being with my family and taking care of my family. And you're right, psychologically, there's a lot of evidence that people, who are in committed long-term relationships are happy. But also, if you have a love and a passion for something, you should be free to pursue it for your life. And if that means that you're not married and you have a solo life, who are we to judge that? That should be a perfectly legitimate life path for people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there is something about the scenario of her betraying Stanley Tucci that almost, if they had walked it back to be a little bit more ambiguously cutthroat to a degree, almost, like, I think the fact that they set him up as this perfectly loyal person, and we get all that time with him and Andy, it works great. Like, it's scintillating, it's dramatic, it's good drama. Yeah. But it is that thing of like, it really makes it feel like we're just saying Miranda's not a good person because of this. If it had been, if it had just been more like, oh yeah, that's a sacrifice she's willing to make, and it's big, and most people wouldn't be able to make that, versus no, she's going to betray someone that's been loyal to her for years. That just feels a little like too egregious. You know what I mean? That feels like where the movie's just saying, yep, these people are bad people.
Well, and the way it's edited in the car, like I mentioned earlier, it's like a twist reveal kind of edit. It makes her look more sinister, because it's like, I am always ahead, and I'm always, it made her look more conniving, just by the nature of the filmmaking. Yeah.
I will point out, I will encourage you guys and viewers and listeners to see the sequel. For sequels, it's a strong sequel. I'm not saying it's the best movie in the world. It's a strong sequel, but more importantly, it actually addresses a lot of the issues that we're talking about, and wrestles with them in various ways. It's also got some other themes about media and the fall of traditional media and stuff like that, which I think is really cool. But when it comes to the personal relationships of the characters, it really does wrestle with them, and even gives us some answers to some things that we're wondering, and makes choices for some of the characters that, in essence, are talking back to us, that we're being critical, and the movie in essence has listened and has made new choices. Obviously, it's 20 years later that, you go, oh, okay, like, we were just critical of it and it made these choices. Obviously I don't want to give anything away, but
those are the best kind of sequels, right?
Yeah, it's a worthy sequel. It has a conversation with what it did, what happened in the first one, as well as moving forward and tackling new issues and new ground.
It's not just a retread. It's not just a nostalgia fest. It's trying to add into the conversation.
Moments, of course, it has its fan service, and it has some really wonderful, fun moments for fans of the first movie, but it doesn't override the overall movie story and themes that it's trying to do. Yeah.
The only thing I've heard about it, I've been avoiding spoilers, is that just the setup for how we kind of get back to square one right? Like how most sequel, like what is the thing that strips the character and makes them start at the beginning of Act One is amazing. It's like I heard what it was, like how they explained how they get there, and I was like, that is brilliant. Like and like one of those things where like it's taking a common problem sequels have of just how do we make an overpowered character at the end of episode one be underpowered again at the episode, at the next movie and have room to grow. I was like, that's
there's brilliant. A bit of a coincidence to it all, but but it also uses clearly very contemporary issues, both for Andy and Miranda, who obviously are separate. And like you said, how does it bring them back together? It is very clever in how it uses very contemporary issues to put them both in a situation that's going to bring them back together. The coincidence is that it all happens sort of right at the same time, but you kind of have to buy that a little bit. I mean, you need something to kind of launch the movie off. But yeah,
I'm hopefully taking my mother-in-law this weekend. Just me and her. Mother-in-law, son-in-law date movie. So I'm excited about that. She's the only person that's near me that wanted to go watch it. And I was like, hell, I want to go. Like I'm waiting on. I just haven't got to see it yet, so I'm excited to watch it. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, real quick, did you have a hard out? You had another meeting? Was it 11:30 or 11? Or
actually, I'm good. My meeting got canceled. So
okay. Well, I just want to get real quick. We kind of did it just then, but maybe some real quick final thoughts on the movie itself. And then how we feel about it 20 years later. And then I want to kind of go into our before we go section and highlight one last thing, obviously, before we go. So, Bruce, final thoughts on The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, I love The Devil Wears Prada. And I know I've spent a lot of time criticizing it. But in a way, partly I'm critical of it because I really love the characters. I love the story. I really like Andy. I mean, of course, Andy she's not as flashy as a lot of the other characters who provide a lot more comic relief and Meryl Streep and all of that. But I really love Andy as a character. And so, my main disappointment is just that I kind of wanted more for her than she gets by the end of the movie. And so she sort of takes blame for things that I don't think she should have had to take blame for. But having said that, I love the movie. I love the fashion. I love the characters. I love the relationship between the characters. I actually, I love the needle drops, despite the fact that Daniel does not. And part of it is just, I'm older. And so, when U2's City of Blinding Lights comes on when they're in Paris, I'm just like, yes, it's just, it just makes me so happy, and it's like, that's the perfect song and the perfect energy. We're in Paris and it's beautiful and awesome. And, and so I just love the feel of it. I love the characters. It's a fun movie to watch. I wish somehow they'd figured out the themes just a little more strongly, but yeah, I love it. And I enjoyed the sequel and I will definitely get it and watch it more when it comes out too. So yeah.
I'll just clarify. I actually like the needle drops. The ones that bother me more are these like new jazz, sound like they could be in Ocean's 11. like that stuff was just a little bit like, okay, this feels like an old movie would have chosen this music kind of thing. That's that. I like the needle drops. They're nostalgic. I love that era of music.
Yeah. We mentioned it earlier, and you're talking about it now too, Bruce. Is that the movie, outside these themes and plot issues that we have, everything else about the filmmaking is invisible because it's so good. Whether it's the shots, I mean, it feels like a perfectly made, perfectly competent, more than competent filmmaking type of movie, right? Every shot looks great. The acting's phenomenal. It's invisible editing. There's nothing that really that pulls you out for any second on the filmmaking side of it, which is awesome, which is great. And obviously the first movie made a lot of money, and so they did a good job in terms of making. I mean, obviously fashion is a huge topic, but it reached across the aisle. You don't get to $300-400 million movie without men going to. You just don't. And so I think, it's a great, I've always enjoyed watching it. I had a great time watching it last night and finishing it this morning. And I'm again, it's really made me excited for the sequel because I don't know anything about it other than like the very first teaser.
Yeah, I went in blind too.
Yeah,
which was
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
And I just can't, honestly, I want to know what happened to Stanley Tucci's character. That's all I care about. And so I'm excited to see what happens. But yeah, Daniel, what are your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's iconic. It really is. It's an iconic Anne Hathaway movie. It's an iconic Meryl Streep movie. It's an iconic the guy you just Stanley Tucci movie. Like it's just like for all of them, I would put it pretty high in their catalog for their best movies. You know what I mean? It's there's not a bad performance. I mean, I think the fact that Emily Blunt's a side character in this film, and compared to who she is now, it's just like. It's wild, you know what I mean? And she knocks it out of the park as her role as Emily, right? Like there couldn't have been a better casting for that role. That's how each one of these feels. So I agree. It's like, it's a classical movie in the ways of like, it's shot perfectly. The casting is incredible. The acting is incredible. It does have a more of that, 2006 modern feel to some of it, even just the pacing and things. But like, again, the fact that we're finding these issues in it is coming from repeated rewatches and like kind of taking a fine-tooth comb to all of the narrative threads. Like it's taking effort to find these problems in the movie to a degree, right? Yes, of course, I think you can watch it and kind of recognize some of the problems at the end in terms of the themes or Nate, but I think in general, when we're going through like, why did this guy do this here? It's like, we can say that, but when I'm watching it, I didn't feel that. Right? Like it's just
and regardless of the themes, the character choices are motivated. I mean, whether you think, whatever you think of Nate, it's not like you go like, why is he saying that? Like, yes, maybe he's not being supportive, but his reactions are human and natural. Christian is slimy in exactly the right ways.
Absolutely.
Everyone's doing like what they're supposed to do. And you never watch it and go, wait, what? No.
Other than the Florida hurricane moment. I agree. But you're right. It's that thing of like, again, you're watching the ending and it feels great. Yeah. It feels like, oh, this connected all the dots and did all the things, and again, and so it's a really, 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 really good movie. Like it's just, it's high up there. Again, I feel like weird because we've been talking about the problems, but like these are second viewing fine-tooth comb problems. Like for doing what it needs to do is being an entertaining 90 minutes, 2 hours or whatever it is, and having interesting characters, having a fun story, it accomplishes everything.
Yeah, I guess the final genre is comedy drama. That is the genre, right?
Yeah, that's what I would call it. Yeah.
Well, before we go, we like to highlight one last thing that may or may not be movie related. Bruce, what do you got for us?
I have two things, and I'll try to move through them quickly. But one's movie related, and one is not. The first one is aimed at vinyl collectors. If we have any vinyl collectors in the audience, I have been pretty heavily involved in beta testing an app called Spin Stack. And if you have a vinyl collection, then you probably track it on the Discogs website and you put all your records in there. And then there's a lot of apps that allow you to sort of access your Discogs collection and rate your movie or rate your vinyl and do all this kind of stuff. And so I just stumbled across this app. And I really liked, there's some really, really cool features to it, but it's still in early stages. I mean, you can get it on the App Store now. And so the guy who's building it, he invited me to help beta test it. And so I've been doing that. So I've been kind of, obviously it's all him, but I've been giving him suggestions for layout and different things. And it's been a lot of fun, but it's a really cool app. And I think it's going to be a really cool app. So if you're a vinyl collector, strongly suggest you download Spin Stack and give it a spin. The second thing I want to point out or mention is I recently watched Emerald Fennell's movie Wuthering Heights. And there's sort of an interesting thing with Emerald Fennell. This could be a whole other conversation. I'll keep it super brief. Her previous two movies are Promising Young Woman and Saltburn. And I did not like either one of those. I was not a fan of either one of those movies. and people loved those movies. And then Wuthering Heights came out, and suddenly everybody had decided, I don't know, they figured it all out, and they decided that Emerald Fennell was the terrible director, and basically Wuthering Heights got trashed, and everyone sort of reacted against it. Well, it's a great movie. I love Wuthering Heights. So I just want to throw some whatever against the current wisdom. The movies of hers that everyone loves, I don't like. And then she released this movie and they all decided they were going to pile on and dislike it. I actually thought it was great. I really loved it a lot. So if you haven't seen Wuthering Heights, but you've sort of heard, oh, it's got all these problems and it's really, this and that and the other thing, I encourage you to go watch it with an open mind, because I actually thought it was by far her best movie and a really good movie. So
I have been dying to watch it, primarily because I think the trailer for Wuthering Heights is fucking phenomenal. The trailer is so good with the song and how it's cut, and like I'm obsessed with that trailer. And I wanted to go see it in theaters. I just didn't get a chance yet, but I think it's on a streaming service now, or you can rent it or something. So yeah, I'm dying. I'm dying to watch it. No, it's great. Also, it sounds like that Discogs. It's a letterbox for vinyl collectors, right?
You can use it that way, although I haven't really done that, because you have to have friends on Discogs, and then you can sort of bring that into the app. But you can log your spins. One thing that I had never played with before that it has is NFC tags. So basically, you get these little stickers, and then you put it. I put it on the sleeve on my album, and then I can, just like when you pay with your phone, I can hold my phone up without being in the app, and it immediately brings up the album in my phone, and then like I can log that playing of it. So also, like for a lot of people, you like your end of the year reports and stuff like that, and you might know what scrobbling is. So there's like there's this website, Last FM, where a lot of people basically track everything they listen to that's sort of not in normal streaming services. Well, it ties into that, but it also does its own version. So like you can basically track your own statistics of what you're listening to, and kind of see, what you've listened to last month, and what album you're listening to the most, and all that kind of stuff, which is, those kind of features are features that you don't find in some of the normal apps where you sort of just track your collection and stuff. He's added a lot of really neat additional features to it, and it's really exciting. So yeah.
What an interesting thing. It's like this tracking this analog thing. That's so cool. Like I was really into vinyl right before I moved to Oklahoma, and I bought tons of vinyl records, and I was just building a collection, and then it all went into storage. But I was really into it for a second. And I loved hearing the vinyl sound. I was just like obsessed for a short period. But yeah. Daniel, what's your before we go?
My before we go is a small screen recommendation. It is an Apple TV original. It has just started a few weeks ago, and it's my new favorite show right now. It's called Widow's Bay. It is starring Matthew Rhys and Stephen Root. And the best way I can describe it is a cosmic horror comedy. It is. I've never been laughing so much between jump scares. Is literally what, and not even jump scares. It's a much more like it is a Cthulhu story. I mean, it is set on an island in the Northeast, and Matthew Rhys is this mayor trying to make his island successful, but there's all these legends about what this island has been and how it got started, and Stephen Root's trying to scare everyone away. I mean, it's like, but it is just hilarious. The humor is completely dry. No one laughs at anything. It's very much like absurdist humor at times. And then the horror is really good. Like Matthew Rhys is a really good horror actor. Like, I mean, love him from The Americans and stuff. And he has such a range in that show. Like, not only just his character as the dad, but all the characters he plays as a spy. You know what I mean? Like, that guy has incredible range, but he is such a compelling kind of like in over his head character. You know what I mean? Like, it's Stephen Root, and his chemistry is fantastic. The tone of it is just so eerily slow creep. Something's not right, and it takes you a minute to figure out what it is. But then the humor is just like like I'm laughing out loud. It's not just like, oh, that's clever. It's like, that's fucking hilarious how that character reacted to that. I've never seen these two genres so like paired so well, right? Like I usually feel like one of the tones isn't right, or it's sacrificing horror for comedy, or vice versa. And this is like, no, it is married so well. It feels so organic to what this show is. Like I said, I think the latest episode 4 dropped yesterday, and we haven't got to watch it yet, but my wife and I, it's the thing we think about when it's not on. Or we're like, man, I wish we had another one of those to watch. It's great. It's really good.
Yeah, I want to check it out. Yeah, so my before we go is on topic. We're breaking down a movie on like a script level, plot level. And so I have the new Script Notes book by John August and Craig Mazin. And it's just kind of like a collection. I think they're up to like almost episode 750 now. And so it's a collection of some of their best episodes distilled down into a book. And one of the best things about it, and everyone talks about this, is like, for the size of the book, how light it is. And it's like this illusion that you think it's going to be so much heavier, but when you pick it up, it's so light. And so it just feels good in your hand. And I've only read just a little bit of it, but what I have read, it's if you're a fan of the podcast, then it's great. And it's got a lot of cool things in there. And obviously, if people haven't watched the Script Notes or listened to the Script Notes podcast, they have a lot of great insight, whether it's being on the committee of the WGA, or just how to make a movie, and then talking to all these showrunners and directors and filmmakers and writers. And I think it's a great resource for people who are actively working in the industry, and it's just fun, and they're great to listen to. So check out the book, and if you haven't, checked out also the podcast. So,
it's funny how, like, in the beginning of that show, like, if you compared John and Craig, John felt like the more accomplished one.
Yeah.
And now it feels completely flipped.
Yeah, it's flipped. Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting.
Two-time Emmy winner Craig Mazin. Apparently the Sheet Detectives.
What's he adapting next, right?
I don't know, but
something that I watched, he co-wrote something very recently. I can't remember what it was, but
the Sheet Detectives is out last weekend. Apparently it's great. Apparently it's a great script, and he adapted it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he announced another adaptation for HBO coming up soon, in a few years.
I don't remember what it was. Oh, it's Baldur's Gate. It's Baldur's Gate.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, that could go horribly,
right?
But Craig's done pretty good, so we'll see.
Yeah. Do you watch The Last of Us, Bruce? Do you watch that show?
I watched.
Do you?
Yeah.
Chernobyl is one of, if not the best limited series ever made. I don't know.
I think it's for me.
So
Chernobyl.
good.
I mean, Last of Us, especially the second season, kind of, I enjoyed the first season, and but the second season was not so great. But also wanted to mention, I'm not really a listener to their podcast anymore, but were you guys with me was it at South by? No, it wasn't. I actually saw them record a show in person at the Austin Film Festival.
Yeah.
So they're off at Austin Film Festival, and I
got to catch one in LA in 2017 when I was there. They just did one at like the WGA theater.
They usually do one or two a year.
Yeah, and I got like same day popped in and got to watch a live show. It was really cool.
Yeah, I caught them at in LA somewhere in 2018, and they had Jonathan Nolan and his wife Lisa Joy, and they had actually Christopher and Marcus McFeely, also the writers of Endgame and Captain America, all those things. So they had all 6 of those guys on the one panel, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I can't remember the guests they had in Austin, but
I can't remember mine either. But
I think there's a good chance that they actually had Eileen Brosh McKenna. I could be wrong about that. Who wrote both the Devil Wears Prada's movies?
Oh wow, what a cool
that's cool.
Prada meetings.
It's very cool.
I just want to point out real quick, and I think it's a little unusual that even though it's 20 years later, that same writer, same director for both Devil Wears Prada and Devil Wears Prada 2. No additional writers, no new director. Especially the director, because he's not a name person, and I don't know what his career has been since, but I thought it was really cool that, they brought the whole team, obviously.
That is cool.
Adrian, was the one person who got left out, but same.
He got a Starbucks commercial, so he's fine.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, and they're using it. Trust me.
It was the first commercial at every break.
I know.
It was the first one.
I know.
It was just like,
Hilarious. Like that.
it is actually a smart like marketing thing. Like I'm like, that's actually smart, but if you're showing it to me every time, it becomes unsmart. You know what I mean? It becomes like, okay, you guys had one idea.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. I mean, you're right, especially the director thing, especially for someone, it's easily like a studio thing. We're going to give it to somebody who's hot right now, or that would kind of get more press or have, bigger and better interviews. In terms of just like bringing a certain fan base to them, but that's really cool.
Or even
I
just
didn't
like
know
a female director. I could
I could see that.
Having tried to go with the female directors for all the themes and all the what it's doing.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited to watch it, and of course, Bruce, we always appreciate you being on, and these are always our favorite episodes to record, and always learn a lot, and I hope we continue to keep doing them, and I'm excited for the next movie that we do.
Yeah, me too. And let's try to make sure we at least get another one done this summer.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still like my Heat idea. Heat 2's coming out next year. Maybe we wait till then. I don't know. But I like to do something even more different than Devil Wears Prada next time. Whatever that is, we'll figure it out. So, how can our listeners find you and all the cool things that you do, Bruce?
Oh, actually, I had a third thing, and I'm going to ask you guys to do this too. So as you both know, my main website is the Hutch Files on Substack. So you can just go to thehutchfiles.com and you'll find breakdowns that I do of the movies that we discuss, as well as other breakdowns. But I also have a new site that started off as the site where I was just hosting my movies, but I'm actually launching it as like a streaming platform for super indie type movies. The first movie I think is going to come out next week, and it's arthouse-cinema.net.
Okay.
So Arthouse Cinema is kind of the name of the site, but arthouse-cinema.net. Would love to get subscriptions from you guys if you haven't subscribed, and from any listeners. And basically the idea is that filmmakers can submit films for free, and we're really looking for not sort of typical movies. We're looking for art house cinema movies. We're looking for movies that take risks, that are really DIY, that maybe, I'm not saying that they didn't get into festivals, but that are just quirky and interesting and unique, that are maybe having a hard time finding a home. Want to stream them on this site. And then if you subscribe as a viewer, it's free, and you get to you'll get an email once or twice a month with a new movie. It might be a short or it might be a feature, but it's not going to overwhelm people. And that movie is going to be the featured movie for that length of time until we put up the next movie. And then the other really neat thing that I like about the model that we've set up is that when you go to a specific filmmaker's page, if they've decided to do this, they will list their own PayPal, Vimeo, Cash App. So no money goes to me at all. You watch the movie, and if you like it, you can give a donation straight to the filmmaker.
That's cool.
I'm going to sort of the launch with the first kind of new movie is going to be next week. And I'm really trying to build up our subscriber base, which again, completely free to subscribe. So one more time, arthouse-cinema.net.
I'm signing up right after this.
Yep, yeah, I'll make sure it's in our comments.
That should have been my main thing when you asked me before.
That's okay.
But
all good.
That's great.
Well, our listeners, you can write in. You can message us on our YouTube video. You can now leave comments in Spotify, and I'm guessing Apple Podcasts at this point too. So any of those places, basically anywhere you consume, there's probably a way to reach out to us. So if you have questions, if you have things that we missed, maybe there's a critical point to Devil Wears Prada that we just glossed over and it makes everything work, let us know. In one of the places, we'd love to talk about that with you.
I'd love to get an audience member suggestion for a movie for us to do something.
That would be great.
Yes.
That would be great.
Yeah. I know there's a few people I do know that listen regularly, especially to our episodes, that I'm sure would have some ideas.
Yeah. Let's do Trolls 2. Let's do that one next.
No.
Yeah, we
Shrek
do
2.
preserve the right to,
Of course.
Of course, yes.
to veto the proposal, but I would
Yeah.
love to.
Yes.
We've made no bones about to our audience that we override all their decisions. We've told them repeatedly that their opinion does not matter.
Yes,
Or at
exactly.
least Daniel has told them that multiple times. So it will work out. Well, hey, again, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, I'm excited for the next one. I'm excited to watch Devil Wears Prada 2. And I forgot how to sign off on this thing. Oh, I guess my name is Donavon Thompson. There we go.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
I'm Bruce Hutchinson.
And we'll see you at your next session.
Real Therapy is brought to you by 241 Studios and viewers like you. Thanks for stopping by. Remember to tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. for a new session with Daniel and Donavon. And remember,
They're gonna talk about how it makes them feel. They're gonna watch all the movie reels, 'cause it's Dan and Don